The Toaster Project. A 20th century man finds himself alone on a strange planet, populated only by technologically primitive people, and assumes he'll become their emperor and transform their society with his command of technology and science, but realizes that without the rest of human society, he can barely make a sandwich, let alone a toaster. This happened to the hero of, or in the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this story is what inspired Thomas Thwaites to build his own toaster from scratch. We've all thought about what might happen if you were transported back in time with all of your future knowledge. How would you prove that you are superior? Maybe take your phone with you, only to realize that there's no internet and that you've forgotten your charger, let alone if there's electricity. So all that you have is a shiny brick now. But when Thomas set out to build a toaster from scratch, he probably didn't realize it at the time, but his experiment showcased the most fundamental principle that human civilization is built upon. So he set out to build a toaster from scratch and decided to buy the cheapest one that he could find for about £3.94. I think they call the cents like shillings or something. But in any case, he bought the cheapest one, seeing that this might be the simplest one to reverse engineer.
The idea that the cheapest electric toaster would also be the simplest to reverse engineer. I went and bought the cheapest toaster I could find, took it home, and was kind of dismayed to discover that inside this object, which I'd bought for just £3.94, there were 400 different bits made out of 100 plus different materials. I didn't have the rest of my life to do this project. I had maybe 9 months, so I thought, okay, I'll start with 5, and these were steel, mica, plastic, copper and nickel. So starting with steel, how do you make steel? So I went and knocked on the door of the Rio Tinto Chair of Advanced Mineral Extraction at the Royal School of Mines and said, how do you make steel? And Professor Cilliers was very kind and talked me through it. And my vague rememberings from GCSE science, well, steel comes from iron. So I phoned up an iron mine and said, hi, I'm trying to make a toaster. Can I come up and get some iron? Unfortunately, when I got there, it emerges Ray, he had misheard me and thought I was coming up because I was trying to make a poster, and so wasn't kind of prepared to take me into the mines. But after some nagging, I got him to do that.
It was creased limestone, and that was produced by sea creatures 350 million years ago in a nice, warm, sunny atmosphere. When you study geology, you can see what's happened in the past in the world, terrific changes in the earth.
As you can see, they had the Christmas decorations up. And, of course, it wasn't actually a working mine anymore because though Ray was a miner there, the mine had closed and had been reopened as a kind of a tourist attraction because, of course, it can't compete on the scale of operations which are happening in, South America, Australia, wherever. But anyway, I got my suitcase of iron ore and dragged it back to London on the train, and then was faced with the problem, okay, how do you make this rock into components for a toaster?
So he got himself a suitcase full of iron ore and was now ready to smelt it. Keep in mind that he tried to stay as primitive as possible because you need to understand if you need a forge, then you need metal for the casing, which primitive people did not have. You need insulation for the forge, which primitive people did not have. You need a flow of electricity or gas, which they did not have. So he made some exceptions in terms of the processes he used to make this toaster.
About half a night kind of smelting this iron, I dragged out this stuff and it wasn't iron. But luckily, I found a patent online for industrial furnaces that use microwaves and 30 minutes at full power, and I was able to finish off the process. So my next... the next thing I was trying to get was copper. This mine was once the largest copper mine in the world. It's not anymore, but I found a kind of retired geology professor to take me down, and he said, okay, I'll let you have some water from the mine. And the reason I was interested in getting water is because water which goes through mines becomes kind of acidic and will start picking up, dissolving the minerals from the mine. And a good example of this is the Rio Tinto, which is in Portugal. As you can see, it's got lots and lots of minerals dissolved in it, so many such that it's now just a home for bacteria who really like acidic, toxic conditions. But anyway, the water I dragged back from the Isle of Anglesey where the mine was, there was enough copper in it such that I could cast the pins of my metal electric plug.
So he then set out to make a plastic cover for his toaster, which he insisted upon. This was no easy task because unlike steel and bronze, which humans had used for some time, plastic was only discovered first in the early 1900s, I think 1907 or something. He struggled to make or get plastic from oil and then pivoted to plastics made from natural plant oils.
So I looked at other ways of making plastic, and you can actually make plastic from, obviously, oils which come from plants, but also from starches. So this is attempting to make potato starch plastic. And for a while, that was looking really good. I poured it into the mold, which you can see there, which I'd made from a tree trunk. And it was looking good for a while, but I left it outside because you had to leave it outside to dry. And unfortunately, I came back and there were snails kind of eating the unhydrolyzed bits of potato. So kind of out of desperation, I decided that I could think laterally. I was wondering if I could actually mine some brominated flame retardants from myself and put them in my toaster. But
oh dear, oh dear. Oh dear.
So there's a picture of my toaster. That's it without the case on, and there it is on the shelves.
His experiment showcased the most fundamental principle that human civilization is built upon, and that is specialization. So what is specialization? It's when one country has the knowledge and resources to do one thing very well and decide to focus only on that one thing. For example, South America has a lot of, iron mines and, let's say for argument's sake, very few lemon trees. So they decide to focus on iron and leave the lemons for another country, like South Africa. South Africa then imports iron and South America imports lemons. Civilization works far better this way than the alternative, where every monkey tries and makes their own, MacGafter without the proper knowledge or resources. And Thomas found this out the hard way. So what does this toaster project teach us? Well, let's think of it in this way. If you take a Homo sapien baby from 50,000 years ago, maybe even 100,000 years ago, and bring them back to the present day, raise them in our normal day-to-day life and teach them how to read and write, they should be indistinguishable from people of today. We have this misconception that people of the past were less intelligent, but this is not the case. We are here with our current understanding of the world due to a long process of cooperation, and at some point we had this exponential boom that propelled us forward to the present day. For example, look at this photo of a cowboy and a stealth fighter jet. And this is what Marx got wrong about capitalism. In his economic and philosophic manuscripts of 1844, also called the Paris manuscripts, Marx described the craftsman who makes a product from the start to finish, puts his creativity and skill into it, and feels a deep connection to what he creates, versus the factory worker who performs one repetitive task on the assembly line. The factory worker has no relationship to the finished product and feels like a stranger to his own labor. So what he means by this is, for example, a clockmaker who produces a small number of clocks takes a lot of pride in his work. But a factory worker can produce a lot more clocks, double, triple the amount of clocks. But this monotonous task makes him feel no sense of pride in what he makes. If we were to take his point to heart, we would have produced toasters like the one Thomas did. And it ended up costing him. So the original price in British pounds costed him 1,187.54 cents, let's call 54 cents, whatever. And then I adjusted it for inflation and converted it to dollars in 2026. And then you would get about $2,500, which is obviously a lot of money for a toaster that doesn't work. Karl Marx argued that the value of a commodity is determined by the amount of socially necessary labor time embedded in it. More labor, more value. The toaster Thwaites bought for £4 contains, by this logic, minimal labor and therefore minimal value. But the toaster he built himself, by contrast, consumed 9 months of dedicated effort. By the Marxist framework, his handmade toaster should be vastly more valuable. And it probably is, for an art piece. But it obviously isn't value or useful as a working toaster. It melted after 5 seconds. Nobody would pay 9 months' wages for a device that destroys itself on first use. The market assigns the value of, let's say, £4 to a factory toaster, a value infinitely lower because value is not embedded in labor. It's determined by what something is worth to the people who use it. This is the subjective theory of value that economists like Karl Menger and the Austrian school developed in the late 19th century as a direct counter to Marx. And Thomas's toaster illustrates this perfectly. We need specialization. We need it to keep moving humanity forward. And this isn't in terms of toasters and TVs, This includes things like medicine and science, all of which are helped along by specialization. You could be the smartest and most skillful craftsman who ever lived. But if I were to put you in the Stone Age, you would never be able to make a toaster without the help of the entire human race working together.